Right. Okay, so hello everybody. On behalf of the hosting team in Toronto, I want to welcome everyone and say thank you so much for signing on, whatever time you're at, wherever in the world you are. This is the first time we've had a virtual meeting like this to come together and work on designing the design experiment, the first of what we hope will be many virtual meetings over the course of the year and beyond. I'm Monica. I'm going to be doing a quick introduction of the organizing team and the presenting teams, and then just taking care of a couple housekeeping items. And then we'll be turning the presentation over to all of you. We have, as you can tell, oh, hi, Audrey.
Hey there.
We just started 1 minute ago. I was just introducing myself, and we're just about to actually go over. If you haven't muted your microphone, that would be great, just so we don't have any feedback. But we do actually have folks signing in from all over the world. So the last time we checked, there was over 45 registrants, over about 14 countries that we have signing on today. So really from all over the world. So it's amazing that we could all find a time that actually works for everyone. This is awesome. So we have folks from everywhere around the world, and we're very super excited that we can have everyone here to talk about this design experiment as we head into this year. I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items before we start. If you're having any technical troubles whatsoever, please contact Renato. His email is up on the slide, but he's also going to be, so he'll be monitoring his email, but he'll also be active in Zoom, so you can send him a message in the Zoom chat. He'll also put his email up there so that you can scroll through the chat if you need to refer to it at any point in the session. We do have, the presenting teams will be speaking for about 10 minutes or so. And we do have a lot of time for a lot of discussion. So we're really hoping to make this as interactive as possible. We will be running, and we'll have team members here organizing and monitoring knowledge forum, as well as the Zoom chat. So please at any time, feel free to contribute ideas or questions to the Zoom chat or to the knowledge forum space. We'll be monitoring those spaces, as I said, and and trying to include everyone's ideas as much as possible into the discussion. So please don't be shy about entering in anything in either spot. We do really encourage you to go on to the knowledge forum community that we have set up for these virtual sessions. We had a couple pilot sessions over the course of the year. Actually, we've had 2, and so we have archived sessions there, but we are hoping to build and use this community as we go forward, doing the series of webinars. So if you haven't signed in yet, please feel free to sign in and become a member of this community. We can have a sort of back channel conversation there as the session's running, but we also really would like to use this community to sustain this dialogue and keep people connected throughout the year. So the connection details are on this slide. I can also throw them up on the chat afterwards as well, so you can refer to them there. Or just if you have any questions as well, you can feel free to email me. I've been in correspondence with everybody, so I'll also throw my email up on the chat. So we do hope that this will be a very rich and engaging interactive session. We don't doubt it with the presenters that we have. We also will be sending out, we know some people are signing in from schools and might have to run out for a bit or leave early. We will be recording the session and we'll forward an annotated version. We'll put one up on the knowledge forum community, but also be sending one out to everybody, so you won't miss anything if you have to step out. Okay, so now without further ado, I'd like to introduce you quickly, just go over the names of the folks that we'll be hearing from today. Before passing it over to Marlene. So we have from Singapore, we have, I'm gonna go back to our KF slide so we can see the tiny little portraits. We have Melvin Chan, Lalitha Raj, Aloysius Ong, and Wei Zhao from Singapore. From Toronto, we have Jordan Holmes, Ann Russell, Roger Chow, and Carrie Weir from the Michener Institute of Education. And speaking on behalf of KB educators, Patricia Barones from Mexico and Darlene Martin from Ontario will be Leanne Ma, who has worked with these two educators in the past and is familiar with their work. So she will be speaking on their behalf. They couldn't make it here today. We also have Ahmad Khanlari, who is an IKIT team member here, and will be speaking on his work for new designs and analytics for KB and KF for the design experiment. You also, and have been hearing Susanna La Rosa chime in. She's going to be helping us monitoring the chat. So if we have to, she might be chiming into the conversation as well, bringing in people's ideas from the chat into the conversation. So now I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Marlene Scardamalia, who is the director of IKIT, and will build on to these very quick introductions in the next few slides. Marlene?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So there's a great deal of work going on throughout the network. And as Monica said, we're joined by the Michener Institute team. Monica, if you can just keep moving through the slides. The team from Singapore and the team from Mexico and Ontario. So while they're the presenters, in the next slide, you'll see that our goal is to engage the knowledge building global community. And that requires that we have ideas rising and advancing through what will be the new public layer of knowledge forum. So we're trying to vaguely mock that up through the series of slides you'll see. But the idea is that ideas from local communities drive advances and discoveries, and that we need to start crossing across databases. So I've added in this one to our presenters. They're not formally presenting today, but the Jackman Institute of Child Study is for the team in Toronto, a long-standing, well over 10 years of work. And what I really want to stress is, as a partner to this, we have been able to look within their databases and see what's happening. So even though they're not presenting today, their ideas are being presented, and this notion of being able to cross in-person and virtual lines and connect through ideas, and those ideas being worked with in teams of scientists, researchers, and engineers to help demonstrate the power of our collective work. So one of the things that's important about the Michener Institute, the design experiment is titled Saving the Planet, Saving Lives, and knowledge building is very much about knowledge for public good. And so it seemed to us that trying to demonstrate the extent to which our global community can literally advance issues on saving the planet, saving lives. So of course, that is the goal of the Michener Institute. And they have actually hosted, for those of you who were at our Summer Institute, you saw they now have the Sciences of COVID-19 series, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But from the Summer Institute, you saw that they actually hosted teams right in the labs, as you can see an image in the next slide. So they have advanced facilities, but so do many of you in your network. And so being able to host, the Michener Institute had planned this summer that we were going to host an event that would be an in-site event to contribute to the virtual events. And that it was needed to be canceled because of COVID, but the idea is live and well, and we're going to continue to do that. And so working through advanced facilities and cutting edge ideas across sites is the goal of our design experiment. So the biggest challenge is to find issues at the intersect. And I'm going to try that today, just give you a glimpse of it from the 3 sites that are presenting and from the Jackman Institute. And as I say, the data from the Jackman will be speaking much the way the speakers are literally presenting in their presentations in the webinar to come. The point I really want to make is that it's the issues at the intersect that we hope to keep driving the initiative forward. So let me give you some examples of what we have in mind. So now this is just Michener and the Jackman Institute of Child Study. So what could they possibly be working on in common? So as just a mini experiment, I know that at the Jackman, they have a unit on salmon, and they study salmon, their habitats. They release salmon that they have worked with within their classroom into ponds. So I decided to do a little semantic analysis, and Ahmad will talk much more about this, and he is available, and we're just so delighted that he's taken a postdoc that is to help us all do these kinds of connections, and he'll say a few words about that. But I simply took salmon and COVID. So those are 2 words, one from Michener, one from the Jackman Institute. And I looked for cutting edge ideas at the intersect of COVID and salmon. And I found some things that were really new to me and quite surprising. I didn't know that salmon may harbor infectious coronavirus, and that there's huge economic issues around salmon possibly being a host for the virus. So 2, for me, new ideas coming out these seemingly disparate and unconnected areas. Then I looked a little bit further, and in the COVID-19 series of the Michener Institute, there was a talk given, The Pathology of Poverty. And again, through semantic connectedness, this was connected with a slide from the Jackman Institute, where the students were connected to graphing technology. And through the graphing technology, they were studying GDP, poverty in different nations. They were doing really elaborate explorations. In the upper right, you can see a graph from their Knowledge Forum database. So the semantics of the Michener pathology of poverty can readily connect to the semantics of the work on poverty indications within the Jackman. And then again, looking at the cutting edge at this intersect, I learned a lot about how climate change is leading to the redistribution of life on Earth. Well, anyhow, these were all new and really interesting ideas to me. And I learned a lot more about deep inequalities that make society as a whole more vulnerable. So all I'm trying to put a point on this, seemingly disparate communities, if we use the analytic tools and look at cutting edge breakthroughs in those areas, we get to new places. If these happen to be interesting to any of you, these new places, then they could help define issues that would bring us together around new ideas. So next I will show you this same kind of connectedness across the presenters today. Now, I do want to stress, we hope that all of you will do a presentation and allow us to do these levels of connectedness with your particular knowledge forum databases and pull ideas together. But again, for the presenters today, you can see issues, and I won't go through these, but really diverse and fascinating issues. Now, if we do the same thing and take the semantics of the spaces that we're working on, in the next slide, you'll see that, again, the one right before that, Monica, again, to my mind, really interesting new, the next one, that one, yeah. Really interesting new issues. I'd never heard of low carbon grain before, so that was an interesting concept. The extent to which sustainable agriculture depends on biodiversity. So these were two absolutely different spaces within different databases that are joined by really advanced articles on the fragility of linkages between agriculture and nature. I also learned through this process of linking things across disparate sites, moving from the topical level to various propositions of cutting edge research, that there are super enzymes that eat plastic. So literally scientists creating mutant enzymes. Again, brand new to me and pretty interesting, I thought. Then taking child labor and issues of the climate, just again, doing this kind of search for cutting edge work, this deep level of which the phrase is carbon offset child laborers. And I thought, what in the world are carbon offset child laborers? Well, it's like a new industry that as people need to do their carbon offsets, that they can only meet their quotas through keeping the poor and really heavy utilization of child labor. Again, an issue new to me at the intersect of ideas in different spaces. I also learned about the circular economy from a linear model of recycling, which is basically you take something, you make it, you would dispose of it to what they call recyclable plastics that can literally be disassembled into constituent parts at the molecular level. So this notion that we could, and I'm not pretending that these ideas would be exciting for any of you. The challenge, of course, is to find ones that are at the intersect and that would pull us together. What I hope I'm conveying is this notion that through our creating a more public space where ideas at the intersect of our work can live and grow, we can keep ratcheting up the level of engagement and connectedness through these fascinating advances that literally are at the cutting edge of the field. So we may literally make advances in saving the planet, saving lives. And I just want in the next slide to give a really simple sense of next steps. I hope we can return to this at the end of presentations because really how to design this is an issue that designing the design experiment is what we've brought you here today to do and hope that we can continue to do this. We are imagining a webinar series of the sort we're having today, of the sort that you will volunteer for and be part of these presentations. So you would be both part of the virtual presentations and also what you need to allow us to start working with your databases. We're envisioning a public layer of knowledge forum, and that would contain these cutting edge ideas at the intersect of the sort I just showed you. We would bolster that with notifications to local communities. So we would let you know, this idea is connected to this idea, and we would like to publish this, and we would work with you to get all kinds of ethics and publication possibilities. But we could start publishing notes onto the public layer. And then, just as in discovering these points of connection, there were lots of new resources. So this notion that we would actually have what I'm labeling a cutting edge libraries, and they would actually reside in our resources, which could be annotated and linked and formed increasingly new semantic spaces. So these new semantic spaces that come from the very articles that are at the cutting edge would help keep driving our ideas forward. So let us know what you want. We've built a team that is really quite committed to making these advances. That's all I have to say. I hope we have time to return to this at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Marlene. And we can, if anyone wants to refer to any of these slides later on throughout the hour and a half, we can always call them up as well. Building on to Marlene's discussion of the design experiment, I'm just going to invite Ahmad right now to come on and talk about his work playing with different analytics for looking at knowledge forum databases and trying to find those kinds of connections and discoveries. So Ahmad, if you're there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Monica, and thanks, everyone, for coming to this presentation. Yeah, I'm going to talk about some of the work that we have been doing at IKIT. So this graph that you see is a result of a study that we did last year in order to identify semantic space of a student's discussion. Actually, this is this course from grade 1 JCS database that we have. And as you can see at the center, we have a big circle that is the main topic of discussion. Students from grade 1 were expected to talk about water and water cycle, but we noticed that they went beyond the curriculum expectation that was the water and water cycle. They connected the main topic with other topics, like, for example, space system from grade 6 with water and energy from grade 2, and properties of matter in grade 5, biodiversity grade 6, human body and organ system grade 5, rocks and mineral grade 4. So when the students, as you know, as young as grade 1 students, when they were discussing the main topic, they were able to deepen their discussion by connecting the main topic with other topics. So it kind of inspired us to move forward with employing some computational text analysis like topic modeling, because we noticed that students are kind of crisscrossing topics. So we are using some computational text analysis and discourse analysis like topic modeling to identify the level of connectedness and between different communities. For example, we can do topic modeling to identify connection between students in JCS and students in Singapore and so on, to identify the level of connectedness and demonstrate the power of the work that they are doing at different sites. So Monica, if you please go to the next slide. Yeah, so this slide shows students' connections from different sites. For example, we have JICS database and the topics that they discuss, and we have Singapore at the lower right, and we have KBSI design experiment discussion. And here you can see the the overlap between these three networks. We have, for example, issues like or topics like leaves, air, grow, and oxygen that are overlapping between Singapore and JCS. We have water, plant, and so on, overlapping between Singapore and KBSI 2018 design experiment. We have topics like animal, garbage, dye, trees, overlapping between GICS and KBSI 2018 design experiment discussion. So using these kind of analysis, we would be able to identify the intersection of the works and to encourage discourse and meta discourse between those three communities. And yeah, Monica, is there any yeah, so this is this is the last visualization, kind of showing the same same thing that I just presented in the previous slide, but in different visualization using integrating topic modeling and social network analysis. And here again, you see the overlapping discussion, intersection of these three communities that can be used to encourage discourse and meta discourse. And this is just some preliminary results, and we are going to improve the work that we are doing, and hopefully we will have some more advanced analytics in the future. Yeah, if you have any questions about the slides or about the way that the topic modeling and the social network analysis and topic modeling together work, we can definitely discuss about that. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ahmad. I'd like to just open it up for the next 10 minutes or so. If anyone has any questions for Marlene or Ahmad about the design experiment or about the analytics, please feel free to have a discussion right now. There's also, again, the chat and knowledge forum if you want to kind of park ideas somewhere as well.
I have a question, if it's possible.
Sure, go ahead, Stefano.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad, for your interesting presentation. Thank you, Marlene, for the big introduction about the intersection among different communities. I'm just wondering if in the graph I can see at the moment in the screen, it is possible to identify not only the connection about the different words, but also the frequency of the connection, representing, for instance, with the shape of the tide, for instance.
Yeah. Hi, Stefano. Nice to see you here.
Hi, Matt.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely possible. We can have, because I'm using the result of topic modeling in the social network analysis tool, and based on the, for example, frequency of the word, or we can say the weight of that we can definitely have thicker or thinner lines here. So yeah, it's possible. I just use the same weight for all the words, but definitely it's possible to show them using different lines and the thickness of the lines. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I have a question, Ahmad, and hi, Stefano. Nice to see you in Italy.
Hi.
Hello, I'm just building on Stefano's question. So it's interesting to see the frequency reflected in the analysis. That would be interesting to see. Also wondering about how you're tackling knowledge advancement. So we're seeing the semantic relationships across communities, but is the knowledge advancing, and how do you get at that?
Yeah, actually, this is one of the main challenges in knowledge building, to identify knowledge advancement. But some ideas that we have is to use kind of text similarity measures. Like, for example, there are some text similarity measures in NLP techniques, like cosine similarity or Jacquard similarity that we can use to identify, for example, the similarities between the student's discourse and, for example, a scientific article. So this is one way that we can see whether a student's ideas are improving over time, whether the similarity between a student's discourse and a scientific document or scientific article is increasing over time. So this is one way that we can do. And I just want to mention that this work is based on the similarity of the keywords, using the same keywords, but there are some more advanced ways to identify similarities between text, using glove methods that is proposed by Google. And there are some other things that not only the similarity of the word, using the same words, but also using synonyms and similar words are considered. I recently did an experiment and developed a code to identify similarities between text and scientific articles based on semantic similarities, not only using the same words. But to provide a maybe quick answer, I can say that one way is to identify idea improvement is to look for similarities between a student's discourse and scientific articles, or maybe a benchmark to see if the ideas are improving over time. So this is one way that we can do. There might be other ways, but I think yeah, the only ideas that I have right now, and I'm working on actually on that idea to to develop a tool to identify idea trajectory over time is based on text similarities between a benchmark and maybe a student's discourse. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Marlene, the other thing that we've been just starting on is that the increases in the repertoire of terms for each student. So they use new terms, and the more new terms they use, the greater the likelihood that they are into new content areas. And then if they use those terms in relation to other terms, the more advanced the terminology is, and the more connected it is to more terms, the greater the idea improvement. I mean, we still have to test that, but in fact, the use of vocabulary, just simple increases in vocabulary and connectedness of words. So just as I was kind of modeling this, super enzyme, mutant, child labor, like if these new concepts are getting into their repertoire, then they're not just mapping onto the scientific text, but they're starting to use it in their productive vocabulary. So that's another piece that we expect for idea improvement.
This is Carl. I have two questions to raise. One would be, how difficult is it going to be to get this the sort of thing you're doing, Ahmad, to be cross-language, interlanguage, because we'd need to find not only synonyms within a given language, but also the translatable terms, so that different language databases can get together in it. I'm sure that's can be done, but I'm just wondering how far in the future that stands. The other thing I'd bring up is that these interesting, unexpected ideas that come from looking at combinations of topics that people are doing. The examples that Marlene gave, it looks to me as if they're difficult to find automatically, but that finding words that are common in one database, common in another, but the combination of them is rare. would, but that combination does exist out there in the literature, would be a way to find these ideas, so that salmon and COVID aren't currently being linked, I gather. They could be, and then you've got an interesting topic, new topic to be examining. But those two do co-occur out on the internet. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to bring that kind of search in so that it helps us to find these promising ideas that will take people into new territory, rather than just finding the ideas that are already in their territory.
I think there are some, yeah, I've seen some ways that, for example, there are some text summarization tools that, not tools, actually, I was working on, I was writing a code to do text summarization using NLP technique, and using those text summarization, we are able to automatically summarize the text and identify the main point of those texts. I actually did a text summarization on you and Marlene's paper, and I wanted to send the results to you, and I found the result very interesting, that it shows the kind of the picture of the overall picture or overall space of the text. And I think there might be some ways, I'm not 100% sure, but I think some ways like text summarization, we can identify the important sentences or important part of the text and identify those, you know, those interesting discussions or interesting points that are mentioned in the discussion. So I think there might be some ways, but it needs to be tested. But but I think using this approach, the text summarization, that we can somehow address the point that you mentioned, you know, identifying the other ideas. But yeah, but yeah, this is just an experiment that I'm doing, and I will be happy to share the preliminary result with you and Marlene and others to see how it works. But about your, your first question was about intersection between different languages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's somehow hard to do that one, but we may be able to use automated translation tools that I think I recently used Columbia's database to automatically translate them to English using Google Translator, and actually Susanna verified that the translation was very good and was very reliable. So one way that we can do to identify similarities between databases in different languages to maybe auto-translate them, but this is one way that I can think of at the moment. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's any other ways to find intersection between, you know, different communities with different languages. Yeah, I will be happy to hear from others if they know of any ways, but I think using auto translators can be one of the good ways to do that.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. And I'm just noticing now, Bodong also just put something up in the chat box as a response to some of these questions. We are going to be mining the chat box too and putting all of these ideas in the KF as well. So if some of these questions come up, we can have, if team members around the world have responses or things that you're doing, please, the knowledge forum, if we don't have space in the discussion, would be a great place for everyone to share what everyone else is doing so that we could build off of the advances that are being made in the interest of the design experiment. And of course, I'm hoping that we'll have time to come back to talking about some of the issues around the design experiment ways of like linking the local sites together. And what we were hoping was to have it, start the session off by looking at the big picture, looking at the design experiment and interesting ways of connecting sites across the world. And now what we were hoping for the presenters to be able to share with everybody is looking a little bit closer at the work that's going on in our local sites. So I want to shift focus a little bit now to the presenters, and we can have them speak and share their work for the 10 minutes and then have a small discussion after, and then we'll move on to the next group. And then we can come back together and have a bigger discussion about questions that you might be brewing as you're listening to presenters speak and as you're taking everything in. So I would like right now to invite the Michener team to come on board and share their work with everybody.
Thank you very much, Monica and Marlene and Carl and the whole IKIT team for having us. We're really excited to start this conversation about designing the design experiment. So I'm Anne Russell, for those of you who don't know me, and I have to say, I feel like I'm gonna date myself here, I feel like I'm in romper room. I see Don Phillip, I see Richard Reeve, I see Stefano Cacciamani, I see all these wonderful faces that I haven't seen for a long time, and it's lovely to reconnect with this community. So thank you so much. And I want to just briefly introduce my colleagues who are on the call today, who will be presenting the two knowledge building design experiments, very initial design experiments. And that is Carrie Weir, Roger Chow, and Jordan Holmes. And I'll be turning over the mic to them in just a second. I think what's really exciting for us is actually for Carrie, Roger, and Jordan to start making connections with everyone here on the call and engaging and thinking about how to engage in knowledge building and what we do at the Michener Institute. So for those of you who don't know about the Michener, it's a school in Toronto. It is considered a college, so not a university, although half of our programming is joint with universities. We specialize in what's called the applied health sciences. So those are the health professions that typically are using high technology. So the heart-lung machine, the nuclear medicine, PET scan, the CT scanners, MRIs, really high technology. What's challenging, and just, you know, full disclosure, we don't use Knowledge Forum, and it's been a very tough slog to get knowledge building theory intentionally used across the board, I would say. However, there's incredible knowledge building going on all the time at the Michener Institute, as Marlene has alluded to. But we don't have any formal design experiments that have really taken root over the years until very recently. What I would say our two challenges are, especially since COVID, is that all the professions that we educate, there's about 1,000 full-time students and 4,000 continuing ed, but of those full-time programs, they really rely on experiential learning and simulation-based learning. So there hasn't been until COVID the need to really be thinking about how to maximize the online learning experience, because we're very much a lab-based school. However, since COVID now, all of the programming has gone online, and the experiential and simulation-based learning has taken, you know, kind of the back seat, and we're only able to do it in certain programs in a very limited way. So I think what we'd be very interested in working on together as a community is understanding best practices in online learning, teaching and learning for deep understanding, how to use knowledge building in our curriculum design and assessment strategies. The other thing that's really emerged since COVID is this need, even among the highly educated health professions, the need for the rapid generation of new deep understanding and new knowledge related to COVID. And so Marlene has talked about a lecture series that we started about the science of COVID. But that actually was born out of the need for idea improvement. And very rapidly, we had to create authoritative sources, Marlene, for what is the emerging literature in this. So we actually do have a database that we keep building on, that is created by our librarians. And it's updated constantly about the emerging science related to COVID. So that's a knowledge resource that that wouldn't have existed prior to this. And it's really evidence of the how just the need for communities, extended communities, to be engaged in the generation of new knowledge and deep understanding. So I think that's another very interesting opportunity. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to Carrie Weir, who'll introduce her role at Michener. And I wanted to say that what Carrie's going to talk about is the simulation that happened last summer. However, I wanted to say that we've always been challenged in the health sciences to make the argument for knowledge building theory having legs because the professions are so practice based. What was really an interesting idea that came out of the experiment that Carrie will talk about is that the perspective of the young students who participated in the simulation, one of the emerging themes that came out of their discourse when they put their notes in the knowledge forum database, one of the emergent themes was the importance of having experiential learning, the importance of simulation, the importance of being able to practice life-saving techniques and CPR, in a simulation space instead of like doing it, going from a classroom right into a medical environment. And I thought it was a very interesting observation the students made themselves about this intersection between idea improvement and practice improvement. So I will leave it there and turn it over to Carrie.
Thanks, Anne. Actually, I'm going to invite Roger just to give a very brief overview of what simulation is for those of you who have never had any experience around simulation. So, Roger, do you want to talk about that? We can't hear you, Roger.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try that. So traditionally, what we do in healthcare with a simulation is that we will typically take scenarios based on real life scenarios generally, where we basically apply best practice ideas of who our learners are, what level they're at, what level of education, and what the learning objectives are for that, and then basically the time frame and the number of people we have, because we have to technically move people around to create the situation where they are getting the hands-on practice, and then the time to debrief afterwards. And so that's the idea that we're just creating a scenario and then presenting it authentically for them so that they can relate to that, and then and also creating that safe environment so that they can participate in a safe manner, and closest to reality. At the same time, create enough stress so that they have to kind of deal with these situations under the same idea that they're stressed in the real world. So those basic concepts, and there's a lot more complexity to it, but those basic concepts we always kind of apply to our simulations in the form of a best practice, if you will. And so with the kids, we had a lot. We weren't too worried about creating simulations for the kids because we've worked a lot with the high school age. So high school here in Canada is probably age 13 to 18. And so this group is a little bit younger, so we just had to modify certain things. But we still apply the same best practice principles in creating those environments for them and finding ways that they can relate to so that they can contextualize what we're trying to teach them, or at least offer them the opportunity to participate and learn from themselves as well. So we turned it a little bit more, we opened it up a little bit more so that they are involved in the creation of the simulation, not just participating in simulation, but they got to build a simulation in terms of from the ground up, so that they may have they already know what the topic is, but it's a different thing to then have to go and do it or participate in it. And so we opened it up and had them participate in that role as well, and helping creating it, and for us to learn as well, to see what they're thinking and how they see things. And then once they helped us, or we collaborated as a team to build these, we then went on to the participation part, where they actually participate in the scenario. And we also introduced them to very expensive mannequins. They're over $100,000 each, and so we do that to show, I think, that they're not too young to use such important and expensive equipment. We obviously are very tight on how to protect our equipment, but we show them the respect, and it's a way for us to role model it as well. So how we introduce the mannequin to them. And this is a full body mannequin that has palpable pulses, audible heart sounds and breath sounds, chest movement, eyes that open and close. So he's pretty good imitation of well, I wouldn't say that good, but it's good enough for what we need to do with it. And so how we introduce it is important, because at that point we're already role modeling, because one thing we always teach healthcare professionals is to preserve the patient dignity. And so instead of talking about that, when we introduce them to the mannequin and let them touch it and feel the pulses and listening, we also start introducing them to the mannequin like he's a real patient or she's a real patient, and already are showing the respect that we would a real person. So we're kind of role modeling those things as well. So that's the general idea. I mean, it's a lot more complexity, but those are the general idea of kind of how we did it with this particular group.
So once we gave them a brief overview of what simulation was, and had had them sort of explore the mannequins, we talked about other forms of simulation, live sort of face-to-face simulation, where there is a learner and a confederate, if you will, usually a trained simulationist or simulated participant to be a patient or a coworker. And then we asked them a question. We asked them to, while they were exploring, to think about ways that they could teach and learn, things that they might like to teach and learn through simulation. And we knew that they were journaling. The students that came to us, they were journaling, and we wanted to leave them with a question at the end of the 2 hours. And that question was, if you're thinking about being a force for public good, can you think of anything that you would like to teach through simulation? So we knew we were going to ask that question at the end, and we divided up the students into 2 groups: those who would want to be the learners or first responders, and those who would want to be the Confederates or the SPs. And we took them, the learners got to learn a little bit about first aid and how to respond to, we had decided that we were going to do an earthquake simulation. And so the first responders learned how to do basic first aid, how to check in with victims, to prioritize who needed more help and who needed less help. They were taught how to sort of ask them questions and see if they were in shock, those kinds of things. And then the other group of students came, and they learned a little bit about how to sort of develop a role or a character, what their name was, what happened, what the backstory was. We pulled out our moulage kit, which is makeup for bruising and blood, and they got into that. So although Roger and I had built this structure of what we wanted the simulation to be about, it was really learner focused. Like they really took it and decided, you know, about their characters and how they were going to proceed and so on. And then we went through the simulation, which was very exciting. And then, you know, out of the mouths of babes, you know, I asked them why they thought simulation was a great way to learn. And, you know, they said all of the right things. They said, you know, because it's a safe place to make mistakes, because you can, you know, push the pause button and try things again. And, you know, for all of the years of simulation that I've been doing, it's the one thing, you know, as learners get older, they get more and more trepidatious about making mistakes. And what was really so moving about these kids were that they were not afraid to make mistakes. They were still engaged in the excitement of learning. And I think that the fact that they were immersed in experiential learning was even more exciting to see how they were able to really step out of the fear of making a mistake and really immerse themselves into that simulation. And it was very, very exciting. I'm going to hand it over to Jordan because I could keep talking about this forever.
Hi, everyone. So thank you again so much for having us. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of themes that have emerged here, both from what Anne have said, Roger and Carrie have said. So I think that one of the things that Anne was kind of alluding to is that in the applied health sciences, we historically have had a really strong connection to this kind of procedural knowledge of, you know, how do we interface with our technologies in our health professions to kind of enact the healthcare that our next generation of practitioners need to practice. And I think what's really interesting about this intersection that we've had with IKIT and theories around knowledge building is touching on where we see the future of the health professions to be going. You know, the profession that I you know, joined, you know, quite a few years ago now, is probably not going to exist as it is in another 10 years. You know, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, I think are going to drastically change our relationship with knowledge. And so what examples like we had with the summer students coming in, and we had a project where we were going to build this into a summer camp, you know, pre-COVID, is that we really get to play with this idea of people using simulation or engaging with the simulation as a methodology to really explore more conceptual knowledge and really explore the why, like these mechanisms that are involved with human physiology and with you know, concepts like how poverty intersects with health. So it really allows us to get to a different level of conceptual understanding and innovation within our students. And what we're hoping for, I guess, in the future is to really, you know, use this collaboration with IKIT to start to drive the next round of applicants to Michener who will be coming in with a mindset that's a little bit more kind of innovation focused and a little bit more focused on this conceptual understanding of what's happening. Because really, this is where we see the health professions moving ultimately. I know we're tight on time, so excuse me. So I think maybe we'll leave it there and invite any questions.
Sure, we can open it up for a few questions right now. Also, the next presentation will be Leanne Ma, and it's kind of, we wanted to keep these presentations close together because it's actually work that's happened as an extension of what was going on at Michener and the KPSI in 2018. So there was a lot of excitement about the work that was going on. So we'll leave it right now for a couple minutes if anyone has questions for the Michener team specifically.
This is Marlene. I have a question. I was at a conference recently, well, not recently, pre-COVID, where people were talking about simulations, but just the absolute wealth of simulations that were actually online. So not in a lab, but online simulations. And I'm wondering, is there any connection between the simulation lab you have? Of course, for us, the notion that we would have been able to be in the lab this summer was exciting before that ended. But envisioning us in the future as a community online and with possibilities for some visits, but also a lot of online, are there online simulations that are extensions of the work you're doing? Is there any way we can connect with those simulations? So that's my question.
Maybe I'll take a first stab at that. This is a really, a really pressing question because we've been really consumed with exactly this. Like, how do we, move from a very physical lab-based environment and bring things as much as possible online? And I think the answer is it's complex. There are many kind of core psychomotor skills that a lot of our learners need to be able to learn and demonstrate before they're kind of deemed to be safe to practice on real patients. And I think that will partially always be true. You know, a new member in our team explained it like this. You know, if you are teaching somebody how to swim, eventually they're going to have to get into the pool, and that's true. However, the other thing that we're seeing is this real development of really robust kind of more cognitive simulations. So more like case studies, if you're going into kind of more of like the problem-based learning paradigm of, okay, we're taking these authentic problems and now we're going to use simulation as kind of a methodology to work through what are all the what ifs and what are all of the ways in which this can work out. There's a methodology in simulation called tabletop simulation that's been very prominent lately. For example, this was used as a way for intensive care units to plan for how new models of care were going to be happening in COVID. So that's something to keep an eye out as well. A personal interest of mine too is in virtual reality. So we're starting to get to the point where the technology for virtual reality is inexpensive enough, and the interface with it and the representation of reality is getting good enough. Where for some things, it's replacing the need to get into a real lab. For example, we're engaged in a research project at Michener where we're using virtual reality as an environment in which to teach conflict de-escalation for patients who are suffering from delirium and dementia. So we're really happy to stay connected to this community and sort of think through, what are some other ways where we can use either technology or just innovative thinking to kind of erase that that need to always be on site and hands-on. I don't know, guys, do you have any other thoughts on that, Carrie, Roger, or Anne?
Yeah, if I may, I think historically, simulation came from the anesthesia healthcare sector. And so back in 2000, they were already teaching, we were teaching crisis management. It was anesthesia crisis management, which was a derivative from the airline industry, who did crew resource management, because they knew a lot of the issues with the planes crashing were not technical errors, but human error. So anesthesia recognized that early, because they're the ones that put people to sleep and wake them up after the operation, generally speaking. So they were already dealing with communication issues, non-technical issues, and so since we're talking about the transition, or at least what we have to do now to do stuff online, that is a big gap. That's going to be I think it's a challenge. It's but definitely a challenge to do. So as much as we do, we think about the hands-on practice. the big communication come out, because also healthcare, sorry, let me backtrack, back in 2000, with the publication from the Institute of Medicine, we recognize in healthcare that we do, a lot of people get harmed, in the hundreds of thousands every year get harmed, or worse, due to human error, and a lot of those are believed to be from communication issues. So it's taken, that's back in 2000 when we were doing that with anesthesia, but it's only been in the last 10 years or so where it's hit larger in the mainstream. So it's an area that's still just I think picking up that idea of the non-technical skills and the communication. You're just starting to see it happen more and more across the board, and then now this has happened. So I think that's kind of unresolved, and that will be another issue as well. And I think certainly one of the platforms we saw, Jordan, with the last one we did just before I went on holiday, hers was just using, what was it, Google Notes, or what was she using?
Just like Google Slides, like the
Right.
PowerPoint equivalent. Yeah.
Right. And so she took it very simply, and she really created this platform where people could participate at the same time, which is what happens in real life. Things happen in healthcare, especially during a crisis, simultaneously. And so the online stuff kind of is a barrier to that. So as we, as we can see each other in a group, she designed it so that people can do certain things at the same time, and then they're going to have to communicate that. And so it was actually very interesting. I just saw this before I left. So, and so I wrote to her about saying that you can still present it very similar in a simulation, in that you can hold people back and not let them see the scenario start, and have certain people start the scenario like you would in real life, like let's say a frontline caregiver, like a nurse or physio or something like that, and then as the situation escalates, they call for help, and then you can bring, and at that point the controller or the educator, whoever's controlling the platform, can bring the other people in, and then that creates situations where the person that started the scenario will have to communicate with the person coming in. And those are very real things that happen in healthcare. And so to the point where we've developed systems to help us communicate. So between, and for example, SBAR is one of them. And there's other ones where people use to help people communicate with each other in a very succinct and timely fashion. Because when we're stressed, we all kind of lose some of our ability. And so this is what this is for. And so, sorry, I got sidetracked there a bit, but yeah, I think it's something that's going to get developed more and more as we move on. And there's probably going to be a lot more data available, because we're not the only one going through this. All the colleges, all the nursing colleges are also going through this, and anyone else dealing with these kind of things. So I think there will be a lot more that's going to evolve from this.
I thank you so much to all of you, Roger and Jordan, Carrie. I hate to have to cut folks off, but hopefully we can have a little bit of time at the end to kind of have a larger group discussion. But I would like to turn it over now to Leanne Ma, who will be speaking on behalf of the work of Darlene Martin and Patricia Barones, who were the teachers who, in the teaching team actually, there were other teachers involved as well, but they're in the teaching team who brought the students to the KBSI in 2018, who participated in this simulation education experience through the Michener program and through KB and KF. And so she'll be building on a little bit about the work that they did. And then what was really exciting for all of us to see was Darlene and Patricia carry on this collaboration with their students in subsequent years after this experience that they had together. So it often presents challenges time-wise and coordination-wise to have these sorts of collaborations, but theirs was a really successful one, kind of driven by this excitement that their kids were involved in this amazing program that was put together for them and connected through Knowledge Forum. So Leanne, if you want to take it from here to talk about this work.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, as Monica was saying, Michener did such a great job designing these KB experiences for our Ontario and Mexico students that they decided to take the initiative to continue collaborating over the course of the next 2 years. And it was also really enriching like PD experience for them because they got to see the principles and the knowledge building principles happening in practice. And they, for example, realized the importance of symmetric knowledge advancement, which is not something that we commonly see in K-12 classrooms because they tend to work in their own bounded communities. So it was really nice how through that experience, they thought of the larger importance of building knowledge for public good and connecting classrooms and engaging students as global citizens. So I'm just going to feature a few pieces of their work, and then we can open up the discussion afterward, and you can contact Darlene and Patricia after. So one of the things they talked about was climate change, and as you know, last year there was a huge movement of climate strikes led by young activists, and countries around the world have been banning single-use plastics, and so plastic pollution was a really hot topic that the students discussed, and so they decided to expand the discussion beyond single-use plastics and straws and recyclables to really think about how plastics are used in everyday life. And one example was how plastics are used in medicine. And so the discussion was really rich, and they expanded to then think about what the social responsibilities of individuals and governments are to stop plastic pollution, and as well what are alternatives, and kind of like the other side of creating new forms of materials to address the functions of plastic. And so these are just a few of the notes that the kids wrote. So one kid was saying that plastic is good for hospitals because they're used for IVs, but they're not good when there's straws and water bottles, and it ends up polluting the ocean and hurting animals. And similarly, another student was saying that hospitals need it to carry people, probably in like bags or like the gurneys and tables, but at the same time, there's a lot of pollution because people actually litter these materials in the oceans. So this was discussed last year in 2019 in the fall, and it's really interesting because now we're seeing similar issues happen in 2020. And so another student was saying that, you know, plastic can hold bags if you're doing like blood transfusions or donating blood. But again, plastic pollution is an issue. And so one student wrote, some scientists believe that by 2020, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish in the sea. So they're really looking forward, and they're thinking about these issues and debating and kind of figuring out the tensions around plastic production, plastic use, and plastic pollution, because, you know, for example, in healthcare, there are really essential needs that plastics are addressing. And so, so it was interesting how within the context of their discussion about plastic pollution and plastic use in healthcare, they touched upon a topic that we're seeing now happening. And so the kids can get to these places, but, you know, for example, if they were connected to Michener or other types of authoritative sources and authoritative organizations, these ideas could have been taken further, which is why this Metaspace and this Global Innovation Network has so much promise for sustaining this work. And another another main topic they talked about was human rights. And this is a collaboration with Peter students, which are in high school, who also participated in the design experiment in 2018 with Darlene's kids. And this is like a very big view that they were discussing about the UN global goals. And I think it was last year or 2 years ago, those high school students organized a conference around that, and they invited not only members within our knowledge building network, but also beyond that. So it was a really nice integration of different communities and groups coming together. And same with Cindy, and both of them are actually here today. So if you have any questions about their experiences, you can ask them. So, and as well, like within our knowledge building network, we also had an opportunity to connect our educators and our students with students and staff at JICS at AERA. So you can see that we kind of have these like grassroots movements where we have these educators and students talking about building knowledge and talking about world issues, and we're trying to get them connected across schools, across grade levels, and again, this is why this global knowledge building innovation is important for advancing this work. So this is just a quick reflection from Darlene about her experiences working with the kids. Can you hear this?
I can't hear it yet.
Can you hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
Oh, okay. So basically she was, okay, so I'm not sure how to adjust this. So basically she was saying like the diversity of ideas was really amazing, seeing ideas from different perspectives, and sometimes the kids would get to places that she wouldn't have even thought of. And she was also saying that like because they're so engaged with each other and with students around the world, that when they go home, they're interested in watching the news, and then they'll keep learning, and then they'll bring it back to the classroom and kind of drive these advances of continual knowledge advancement. So they're really engaged and really interested and very passionate about these issues. And the final piece that Darlene ended with, which I wish you could hear, what she was saying, like, we have these like politicians and world leaders who have been addressing these issues for years, and we still don't have problems. So yes, they could be advanced for students in grade 6, but why not give them a try? Like, it's not going to hurt. So it was really nice to see this teacher like value students' epistemic agency and encourage them to build knowledge for public good. So I just wanted to end by saying that if we want to bring knowledge creation into schools and foster the next generation of knowledge builders, we ought to be teaching beyond the curriculum, right? We have to be finding these big ideas at the intersect of different disciplines, working with different organizations, working with different communities. And as educators and researchers, we really need to be breaking barriers that have existed traditionally in schools that prevent cross-grade, cross-school, cross-nation collaboration. And that's what we're hoping to work toward with the Global Knowledge Building Innovation Network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. And I think what you just said is an amazing introduction to the next group from Singapore. And I think I would love to have them present right now, just so that we won't have to rush their presentation. And then we'll have discussion time. We'll still have enough time at the end for a group discussion. So if you are ready, Melvin, Wei, Aloysius, Lolita, would you mind coming right on and piggybacking off Leanne's presentation, and then we can open it up for a group discussion?
Yes, yeah, sure, Monica. Let me share screen first. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Aloysius, and yeah, I'm a researcher from NIE. I'm with Julie's research team, and today, together with Melvin, Lalisa, okay, we are presenting one of our work on the design studio, right? And okay, I'm going to just give you an overview. Okay, I'm going to talk begin with just giving you an idea of activities for the design studio, and then I'll pass it to Melvin and Lalita to share their experiences as teachers who participated in this event, right? So okay, design studio, what is our aim? Hey, we are trying to bring together a community of students for KB discourse on sustainable living. And why are we doing that? Student-driven idea building discourse it is less evident in Singapore classrooms. And also class discussions in seldom really discuss real-world concerns, problems, and because of syllabus coverage and constraints of time, curriculum time. So we managed to put together a community that involved 36 students, aged 10 to 15 from 7 different schools. These include primary and secondary schools, 13 teachers, experts who are scientists from our natural sciences faculty, researchers from NIE, NTU, and industry partners to come together to build knowledge on sustainable living. Right, our design is primarily a principle-based approach. We're also taking a design-based research and multimodal research. Okay, but for this discussion, I'll just focus on principle-based approach. Right, so as you can see from this slide here, we use the knowledge principle to guide the design and key activities. And at every key activities, we provided opportunities for KB discourse for students to be able to discuss with each other through different platforms. So they can discuss with each other through face-to-face group discussion, through whole class discussion, as well as from their KF online discussion. Now, to quickly share with you the first principle of real ideas, authentic problems. So we use this idea, or we use this principle to guide students in exploring sustainability and this issue. As you can see from our photos, here we have a trigger activity, a video talk from Greta Thunberg to stimulate questions and ideas from students about different aspects of sustainable living. So this is really to help them to formulate their initial understanding about sustainable living and letting them zoom into sustainable food source, okay, which is the theme. We'll provide the scenario, but not the problem. So we let them try to think of the problems that they want to solve. And from the next photo, you can see that we invited the scientists to really come and share with them how he approached solving problems. And this is really to help students appreciate that the process of idea improvement embarked by innovator scientists is not linear. So this is really to encourage them to discuss and about the kind of thinking and mindset required of a scientist. And it's not just about learning, we also want to build a culture of thinking. Yeah. Oops. Okay, epistemic agency, okay, the next KB principle I will talk about, okay, is we use this to really help the students to discover the science of sustainable farming. So we have investigative activities that help them to let them predict and test reflection and properties of color lights, and also how color lights actually affect plant growth or photosynthesis. And from this set of activities and all the testings, okay, students were able to explore and develop scientific understanding through hypothesis testing from real investigations. And they can use this scientific exploration and evidence to inform how they tackle sustainable farming as the design studio progresses. So this is really to enhance their epistemic agency through forming and testing hypotheses. Okay, the next slide, okay, we then let them develop and improve ideas of their prototype. So this is very much allowing the group to form initial group ideas. And here is informed by KB principles of idea diversity, democratizing knowledge, and improvable ideas. So we let students think about how to create a new farming system that covers the plant's nutritional needs, enable optimal growth of the plants, and yet save space. So students they gather in groups, and then they started to discuss and generate initial ideas of vertical farming, and they sketched their ideas on on butcher paper, and then they actually were able to share these ideas to the whole class and not only within their group, but also to the whole class, okay, for the whole class to engage in questions and ways to improve it. So in this, by doing so, okay, we allow the students to encourage the students to form different ideas, different types of design, and also the discussion help them to share and obtain feedback from within group, okay, and from other groups, okay, to improve their design. So initially, okay, we saw that the students' ideas actually they try to include what they have learned from the scientific investigations and put in they thought about how to use some colored lights, okay, to make the plant grow, and also they try to stack plants up vertically, okay, to save space. Now then we continue to let them develop and improve their ideas. So, hello? Sorry, there was some echoing. Yeah. Okay, so okay, this is where the principle of improvable ideas, KB discourse, and community knowledge and collective responsibility comes in. So as you can see from the photos here, okay, we let students post their drawings on the wall, and then they also use sticker notes, okay, to put their questions and ways to improve ideas on the group's drawing. So every student have a opportunity, to comment on their peers' ideas on the group drawings, and these questions actually open up for thinking, exploration of different aspects of the problem at hand. So students will ask each other, how does your design work, and like why are you doing this and why are you doing that. And also we open up, okay, students discussion in KF, and we also put the sketches into KF for them to build on. And we continue this process by letting them build their own prototype. So this is really to help them to test their ideas of sustainable farming or the prototype. So every student over here, okay, as you can see from the photos, okay, we let them work with a fixed amount of materials, in line with the theme of sustainability. So they will not be given any extra materials if they, abuse it. And then also, okay, we let them, okay, translate, okay, their sketches, okay, into a model. And every student, okay, contributed to this prototype building and idea sharing. And through these different modes, okay, of they have different modes to express and share their ideas. Earlier we see the sketches, and now they have their model. Okay, and really, okay, this translation is can actually develop students' engineering and designing mindset. And of course, okay, it will also allow them to actually think deeper into the design and expand ideas beyond scientific viability into socio-economic factors involved in building their prototype. Yeah, so for example, when students, they build this prototype, they begin to think about, so how do they actually now can make the water flow, okay, through all the plants. And some students started thinking about having a mechanism, automated machine to pump the water. And then, students also, after they translate into the prototype, they realize that, okay, they may they want something to protect the plants. And then one group started talking about a retractable dome, actually to close up, okay, to protect the plants. And yeah, okay, and then we let them close with rise above. So in this rise above, okay, we actually invited the scientists and researchers, okay, to interact with the students, look at their work, and really not to judge, but really to give constructive feedback, okay, for them to improve on their ideas and prototype. So the scientists actually ask them questions like, do you really need your plants to work 24 hours a day? So, and like just now the group that actually wanted to build a dome to protect the plants, and they started to think about, oh, hey, they actually, if they need the want the prototype to work 24 hours a day, that will require a lot of energy. And is that still sustainable? So, this is really to engage students thinking about their current understanding and, going beyond that. And also, we let them post their all their discussions in KF on the idea ladder to let them see how their ideas have improved. Yeah, so it's really to foster their collaborative thinking mindset through consolidation of ideas, seeing idea improvement, and really not going away thinking that the idea is wrong or the idea is right, but there are always some ways to improve it, and with the perspective from different people, from classmates, from researchers, from scientists, they can think deeper into their setup, right? And of course, what are the roles of teachers and experts? Okay, this is really guided by symmetric knowledge advancement. So for the teachers, okay, we brief them, okay, and encourage them to be observers of learning. So they actually join the students groups, okay, just and try to observe and then take down moments, teachable moments, and some of their own reflections and post into the KF. And some of them actually brought these teachable moments back into the classroom, okay, to extend the to continue the learning with the students. And for the experts, as I mentioned just now, okay, we encourage them not to play the role of authority, but and evaluate students' ideas, but really to engage students in knowledge co-construction. And so, okay, just two key summary points. Okay, so the design studio is really our effort to support students to become knowledge builders in the real world community, tackling real world problems, issues. And using a principle-based approach, students were supported in understanding and generating solutions for sustainable farming. And more importantly, we can see that students learn to appreciate the importance of collective knowledge advancement and to see that ideas, solutions need to be continually improved on. Yeah. So, okay, we thank these following people for the great support and contribution to the design studio. And I'll now pass on to Melvin and Lalita to share on their experiences.
Okay, maybe I'll speak first. My name is Lalita, and I'm a secondary school teacher. I teach 13 to 17-year-old students, and I teach biology and science in a secondary school. So I actually build on the idea that we did for KB Design Studio in Singapore on photosynthesis. I would say that I didn't just build on it, I actually kidnapped the idea on photosynthesis, and it came at the right time because at that time we were going into full home-based learning in Singapore. So we actually had to do another way of teaching, and I was going into photosynthesis, this topic, with my pure bio students. And at that point, funnily enough, we actually had this issue in Singapore where we were thinking, how are we going to ensure that we in Singapore want to produce 30% of our nutritional needs by 2030? And at this point, we were only producing 7%. So instead of doing photosynthesis topic in the same way, facts about photosynthesis, this is what you must know, decided to ask them this this problem that we are facing in Singapore. How can we create this farming system that covers plants' nutritional needs in Singapore? And it was amazing to see how the students went on this problem. And I could see that this is something that actually, I could see that it concerned them. That means it wasn't just something that they had to study, and they could see that there was a real need for this kind of issues. So when they explored it, all the ideas of what they need to know about the topic also came to fruit. It was very interesting. I learned a lot with them. It was very fun to learn together with my students, and we did this all during full home-based learning. So I could see the ideas that I learned from KB Design Studio coming, and I'm very grateful for that. So when we did this, students came up with really good ideas on vertical farming, sustainable farming, urban farming. And at the end of the day, we actually had an e-conference with an expert. And what really resonated with me was that my students, I asked them, because we had presenters, and I asked the presenters, would you like to talk to our prof, who's a plant expert from NIE? And I asked them, would you like to talk about photosynthesis, or would you like to talk about something else? And the students came up and said, can we please talk about vertical farming, or how we can make this very useful, this whole idea of sustainable farming and urban farming come to fruit, not only in Singapore, but in the rest of the world, in other countries as well. And I thought that was a very good idea. In fact, there was a note on KF where one of the students actually said it would be a great idea if we could make sure that all countries are able to have enough for their nutritional needs. And that was how we were able to do photosynthesis. And it came because we built on this idea that we got from KF, from the KB Design Studio. So I just wanted to share this personal experience as a science teacher and a bio teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll add on a bit more. I think for those who know me, I'm a humans teacher, a history teacher. So certainly there's a different approach in terms of how I look at it. Yeah, I think based on what Dr. Aloysius mentioned earlier, what I've observed throughout the whole design studio last year is the fact that students are not competing to be the first to complete it, but instead they are always coming together to combine ideas, to connect the different subjects, the knowledge to hand in hand by itself, or a way to challenge other to stretch further. So I thought the entire culture of building on is very strongly shown throughout the entire design studio by itself. But more than just on my observation, but more importantly is what's the impacts that it brings back to my school. The students that went for the design studio last year, they were primarily lovers of history. Okay, so they were very curious on how can we bring forth what we are learning in design studio back to school. So we started a discussion, and that is how we came up with the idea of a history bulletin or a history newsletter. And they tried to merge science and history coming hand in hand, together with whatever other possible subject coming together, because they see the power of connection. So maybe allow me to just share with you the history bulletin that's created by them. Okay, give me a while. I hope you can take a look. So this is a history bulletin created by the students. They are set to it. They are around 14, 15 years old. Last year they went for the design studio at around 13 or 14 years old. Yeah, so they decided to focus on, because of the COVID-19 situation, they decided to focus on the disease around the world. So the history of diseases, but more than that, they want to relate how history is relevant to our current life. That's the idea that they decided to have a title of story of collective strength that lasts from the past till now. Okay, and next to it is basically they were discovering how historians study disease and medicine. Just like how scientists study disease and medicine, historians also study disease and medicine in different style, different way. So this is how they explore, and they realize that disease and medicine can be a weapon used during war. I'm quite amazed by the entire product by them. And last but not least, they create a design challenge. They did ask their peers, the entire school, to create a futuristic first aid kit, taking into account of the current situation. How do you create a futuristic first aid kit? Yeah, so I believe that to me, this certainly shows the idea of inquiry more than just researching. I think that's a great distinction to be made. Instead of just doing researching items or topics, now they're really inquiring things. They see the complexity and the confusion even within across subjects by itself. Yeah, I'll stop share here for a while. Yes, I'll pass the time back to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there another team member speaking?
No, that's all, Monica.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing all that work with us. There will be, as you mentioned, a 2020 design studio coming up in November, right? Correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And so as far as I know, the theme maps onto the design experiment theme, which is saving the planet, saving lives. And also, I mean, it is last year, the design studio was sort of different world. Now there's an emphasis on at home and distance learning as well. So what an amazing opportunity for collaboration and for learning how to take the best parts of what was happening last year and also create something just as powerful, just as impactful that incorporates virtual learning. I think that's at the forefront of everyone's minds as well. I think these presentations gave us a great look at all of the exciting work that's happening at local sites. And it's great that we could have the opportunity to share this with one another, because especially as everyone's working with all the challenges presented this year, sometimes it's hard to know what's happening in other parts of the world. But I think we could all appreciate the amazing work that's happening in itself, but also as the presenters were speaking, there were so many points of intersect that people were identifying in the chat, and I think that you could see as we were hearing the presenters and learning about their work. And I think the design experiment now is really an effort for us as a global community to explore how we could help each other discover what we're all doing. How can we find these fascinating points of intersect as we're working, and then how can we connect and drive our work forward in ways that map onto these cutting edge problems that the students are identifying and that are at the forefront of the work that experts are doing as well, and some of the shared issues too. So how do we take all these experiences in this education and work with new ways, new technologies, and how can we bring help us to drive our work forward as a global community? And I'd like to ask Marlene. Marlene, do you have any reflections on the presentations in relation to the design experiment, or would you prefer to open it up to a general discussion?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My reflections are that I'm delighted and really anxious to get questions and get feedback so that we can start taking next steps. So I really would like to open it up.
Okay, great. So if anybody has an idea or a question that you've been holding on to, now we have about 15 minutes of discussion time.
I could start.
Great,
hi, good morning. I couldn't find my IKIT hat, sorry, Marlene and Carl, but I needed a hat. I was really captured by the simulations conversation. It reminded me of my first days teaching in the 90s with Sim Earth in my classroom. The backstory on that is it was very early technology, so the simulation would take a very long time to work through the parameters that we had set up. We only had one computer in the classroom. And you would set it up and run it overnight. And every morning we would come in and see that we had killed the planet based on the parameters that we had set out for life on Earth. And what it taught me was that, these things become very part of the thinking of the students when they're in the classroom. It reminded me then of Tom Moyer's simulation work in California with earthquakes, where he had created a room that would quake and the students would have to then figure out where the quake was based on the shaking of the actual classroom. And that idea of sort of local simulations is something I think might be worth considering, because it's both has that DIY where you're actually having the students be part of the development of the simulation or the operation of it very locally, but it does in the theme reach out into the world and ask for data, ask for understandings of the world. Because the other part of the Sim Earth thing, just to finish, is it's based on the Gaia principle, which has been somewhat disproven over the years, that it wasn't expansive enough in terms of all the systems of the Earth being thought about. And so simulations are based on somebody's idea about how the world works, and we need better ideas about that, and those should be built into our sims. But I was sort of captivated by this idea of could classrooms be sort of simulation centers, or at least little engines for developing these. So that was a comment, not a question, I guess.
Yeah, I'll just build on to that. In Singapore, like Monica saying, this year we're going to have to move our design studio completely online. So we don't know what to do, but we told the schools we're going to do that. So, you know, I think the idea of the simulation is just really, I wish we could have our students in Michener Institute. So I was just thinking whether we could kind of kickstart a process and see how our students can actually connect and get some of this experience. I have this question in mind. The other one is back to what Marlene was presenting about the overlapping ideas, and wonder what will it look like if we present it to the students this year and see how they actually takes up the idea. But I think they need to also look at the notes from KF and all that. I mean, just now we are trying to pull the design ideas together and hoping just to integrate it into a home-based environment, which will be completely different from what we have last year. Just want to put these two ideas out. Yeah.
I just build on to that, Shuli. It's so nice to see you all here today and to see friends from far and wide. I was thinking exactly the same thing as Marlene was presenting, the intersection of ideas across communities, and how interesting it would be to show that to the children and to see what their response is to that. I wonder if it would be very motivating and encouraging as they think about their work in their small space being of value to people elsewhere, and what might come of that. So maybe there's a little bit of a research study in that question, but it would be, let's think about how to bring it to the kids in a way that will make sense and be meaningful for them. And they may want to connect with others if they see people working on ideas in a different space. Maybe Zoom might be a way we could bring some children together too. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity, and I hope we have many more.
Hi, everybody. As Chris spoke and from the chat previously, I've been thinking also about those connections between different ideas and different communities, and wondering from the point of view of teachers, how can we show those connections to teachers to help them, even teachers who teach at the same grade level in the same school, to make those connections between the things that students are learning and be able to go deeper into those very complex, profound ideas. It's not easy for teachers to connect to what others are teaching and what's happening in other classrooms, even through talking to their students. And sometimes the students also need help making those connections explicit. So I'm also wondering how to show it to those two groups, to teachers and students, and help them make connections that can help them later become projects in research and deeper learning for both, for teachers and students. So yeah, that is actually sort of a question. Like, have you thought about how to make that happen in the design experiment? And if so, I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
I just wanted to say this notion, you know, our Summer Institute is now in November, and it's going to be virtual. And it would be great to have sessions, to have groups working on exactly these issues about how to show this to teachers, how to show this to students, how to make connections that are meaningful and actually helpful. And I'm thinking that we should actually plan a session on that. And I'm not quite sure how to get that ready, but that would be in a month from now, that maybe we could do a couple of pilot tests. And I think this simulations online, the thing that Richard brought up, I think of the ones I know, there are quite a few connections to the students' ideas. And so I just want to stress that we are putting together a research and engineering team to help us. So if in fact you can think of some things we could do, pilot tests within your sites, or a way to have these be a focal point of our discussions at the Institute in November, the virtual Institute in November. That would be wonderful.
I had a question as well. Is there enough time for another question?
Sure, we have 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be here. My name is Eitan. I'm from Israel. I'm just working on really launching the first kind of pilot KBC initiative in Israel for students. And I'm kind of struck by, like, to me, it seems that maybe there's a new category of knowledge that's emerging here. And I want to just try to, I really want to ask a question because I'm not sure how to categorize this, because there's like this distinction between the knowledge that exists in a community and the knowledge that exists in the world, right? There's a knowledge that I can access or advance by engaging with my fellow community members who I know, who I have access to, etc. And that's the knowledge work we do inside our KBCs. And then there's the knowledge that just exists, you know, out there, which I could access through Google or through my library website or things like that. And I'm wondering kind of where the connections between the different KBCs, where are they positioned? Are they, it seems to me that it's like a third category. It's neither nor. Am I correct?
Eaton, I don't know how directly this answers it, but what we were really, this notion of ideas at the intersect, and then through the Google search, which was really simple, connecting with ideas in the world. So it's the same kind of analytic tools we were using to cross communities also cross to the outer world. And so this notion that students' ideas are extensible to the outer world. And I just did a number of searches and I just started breakthrough. Salmon COVID, breakthrough, just using these to try to find out what are scientists at the cutting edge of the field saying about these things. And so the exploration of the knowledge resources of society and the fact that these are connected to the ideas of the students, the cutting edge of the community is easily extensible to the cutting edge of the world. So I think, in fact, I would think of it as rather smooth trajectory as opposed to another form of knowledge that they are on that trajectory. So sorry, my head's buzzing about a lot of things and I realize we're running out of time. I was wondering about any other input about next steps. I'm taking notes on this and I think we should all deal with these issues at our meeting in November.
I'm just wondering about the connection between simulation and idea improvement, because I think it could be useful to imagine, for instance, if I study a problem with a community, I can make an hypothesis to give an explanation about the problem under study, and then I can test my hypothesis using a simulation to verify if this hypothesis can work in explaining this problem. And if my hypothesis does not work, I can change my hypothesis and implement another simulation, and then I can improve the initial hypothesis in the explanation of the problems.
I'd just like to interject for just 1 minute because it's 10 o'clock right now. So for those of you who have to sign off, thank you so much for signing on. We will be following up. We're going to be sending out an annotated recording of the session, information about the next session, and of course there's the the virtual event in November and the design studio. So you will be hearing from us very soon. Thank you again, everybody, for signing on. If you can and want to stay on for a little bit longer, please feel free to do so. We'll be keeping the meeting up, and we can continue the discussion, and we'll keep that also as part of the recording that we send out. But for now, if you do have to sign off, thank you so much for joining us all, and we will see you very soon. And so for those who want to stay on, I invite you to build on Stefano's comment or contribute another question. We can take the conversation really wherever.
I'd like to throw in an idea here. Fernando raised the question of, well, how does this get out to teachers to find out all the activity that's going on in a vast network? And some of what Ahmad's doing that's aiming for technological solutions to that kind of problem is important. But I'm also struck by how important old-fashioned human methods would figure here. For instance, advertising. If the students in Singapore who were doing this work on vertical farming would produce a 1-minute advertisement about their work, what's interesting about it, what they've accomplished, no more than a minute. And other groups everywhere could do 1 minute. Then you'd have a searchable pool of interesting things that are going on. And you teachers and students everywhere could shop for the things they want to connect to. Because as Eitan says, many of the problems are local, but then there are universal ones as well. And we can go to local problems that are interesting, even though they're not our problems. I'm struck by the fact that vertical farming is really an important idea in Singapore, because there are a lot of people on a small piece of land. Recently, I read that in Russia, 25% of the agricultural land is unused and is a breeding ground for invasive species, and that's the problem there. It's totally different. Yet I would suspect that if they were doing creative online work on invasive species in unused land, that would be an interesting thing even for students in Singapore. And the reverse would be true as well. It's Canada has a lot of land too, and vertical farming doesn't probably have a great future here, but it's very interesting. And what I'm saying is these little 1-minute things, no more than that, would be an important basis for on a website for people to get a sense of what's going on and to shop around and try a little of this. Many things you just want to watch, be a passive lurker, whereas for others you might want to get involved in it.
I'm not doing justice to your 1 minute clip. I really think it's a great idea, and part of what I'm imagining in the public layer of Knowledge Forum is the discoveries of students, the inventions of teachers. So if I just look at what I watched today, there's so much teacher inventiveness, and there were so many student discoveries. So I think, Carl, of the 1 minute as us doing something closer to advertising or publishing, the strength of what's going on in these sites. And I think that's great. But even your contrast between Russia and Singapore. So I was just in this notion of trying to get to the cutting edge of the scientists. I was realizing the extent to which the biodiversity really makes such a huge difference in agriculture and the economy. So these notions at the cutting edge of the 1 minute clips, so that in fact we would have 1 minute clips, but there would be a growing resource of those, and the historical counts. I don't know, Mireya, like the notion of what your students have been doing in history and ancient societies and the connectedness of over time. So this is just by way of saying, Carl, it's almost like these two need to come together. The inventions, the discoveries, but also the growing cutting edge that itself keeps ratcheting up and reconnecting to people. So how do we get this back to teachers and students in a way that creates a progressive sense, creates the next 1 minute video that keeps us at the cutting edge of this work is a big part of what we're trying to do in this design experiment. So it's how to pull these together and what we should do next.
Well, it's an interesting tension you have between the community advertising, what they believe they know, and I always think of that little girl with her hands, right? And the more I know, the more I don't know. The more I know, the more I don't know. And I think it's that space, the horizon that Marlene is talking about, is that edge where could these tools help us to know about that space that's on the horizon that we can move towards, that maybe others are already working in. But certainly I like the DIY. It's my favorite thing these days. And so being able to produce your own video, you're going to care about the knowledge work. I think, Marlene, these sound a little bit like the virtual tours of past, where communities would really work harder because they knew they had to put something out in the world to represent what they knew and where they were at. And so you've got this tension about the horizon, I think, is really it. And is it a tool? Is it just a marketplace? How are we going to have these communities come together, and how are we going to make sure that the students are and the producers are still very much part of it, and not just having a tool do the work for them, but have them be very much part of it.
I would like to jump in as well. I think I was really inspired by the amazing work that was presented today. The challenge we're wrestling with right now is how to design a meta space. It's not only to demonstrate what has been done in each community, but to drive this discourse forward for everybody involved in this design experiment. So that's a really hard challenge. So to get a bit more practical to me, because I need to usually try to think about practical approaches to tackle that, it is about designing what are the possible boundary objects we can share into the meta space, and then the different community can bring back those objects to their own local discourse to move their discourse forward. A video could do that, or an essay could do, or a Rise Above note can do that as well. But in the meantime, they're missing a lot of the, the very detailed richness of what was discussed to come to that point. So I was pretty inspired by what Ahmad showed in terms of the topics, and then especially the networks of terms in each communities, because that can actually maintain some of the details of the conversation a bit more than a summary note or more than a video. So I'm at this moment, I don't have an answer or don't have a solution, but I'm really attracted by this direction of relying more on the network approach of capturing, how those terms are connected in their local community. And especially that if we think about that network as a dynamic network, because as the discourse evolves, this network will shape and reshape. And then what if we could share some type of network representation across communities besides the video clip? The video clip is powerful because it could be really emotional, it could be really powerful and rich and has all kinds of other information. But what if we can share a network representation of the discourse from each community? And then we can, if we have two communities sharing that same type of object, then we can potentially, put those two networks together to see where are the overlaps, where are the potential ways to bring, neighbors together, neighbors in terms of the overlapping terms, or to close gaps between, our networks. So really it's suggesting what's next, what's the future step for both community, instead of, sharing and leave that there without actionable, insights moving forward. So that's what I'm really right now thinking aloud at this moment, but I'm really excited for next steps we have.
Odong, just to build on that, the other piece that Ahmad showed about the extent to which the grade 1 discourse stretched all the way up to grade 6. So this notion of teachers actually seeing, I think most teachers are fearful that, they've got to handle the curriculum and that, letting student inquiry spread isn't fast enough. So there's a fear that they're not covering the curriculum. If, in fact, we could take exactly that connectedness and also use it to help teachers see the extent to which their students are going deep into ideas, they are covering the curriculum, they are beyond their grade level. So starting to address teacher needs about how well their students are doing and show that they're actually exceeding expectations, they're not falling behind. So I'm thinking if we could also offer teacher support in just how well the students are doing. If that's also part of the very mechanism we're using for the connection, teachers might see it as a really valuable service for them and start to address the conundrum of how well are we doing? Are we going to pass tests? Are we meeting curriculum standards? So just from a research perspective, that might be an important piece that has to be tied in or could be tied in.
Can I say something? Hi, everyone. Hi, Marlene. Hi, Carl. I just wanted to say that right now I'm working with Purvis. She's also on the call as well. We're working in the Ismaili community. There is some refugees and immigrants who have come from Syria who are Ismaili, and we're developing a program for them, an ESL program for them. And I'm proposing that we use Knowledge Forum, since Knowledge Forum is really good at teaching reading and writing skills and building a network. And all these immigrants have arrived throughout Canada, so at different major centers. And we're trying to build something. And what I think what would be really helpful for me, because I haven't really been part of this community in a long time in terms of a research capacity, would be like if, you know, for example, you guys showed that map of the world with all of the areas where there's knowledge building going on. And it would be really interesting if that map was on the IKIT website, and we as visitors who are just reacquainting ourselves to knowledge building community, or new people coming into knowledge building community, could just kind of, you know, select one of those dots and see what's going on, for example, in Kenya, or what's going on in Mexico, or what's going on in Singapore. And if we could, and then underneath that link, if there could be two options. One is like a video, like I saw on the Learning Exchange website in the past when I took this AQ at OISE, that the knowledge building team has posted all these videos, and they're amazing. Like I use them all the time now to educate people about knowledge building, what it is. And you know, it would be nice if those could be put into context, like, you know, like we see videos of, say, Richard Reeve talking about knowledge building, or the teachers at ICS talking about their knowledge building advances. And wouldn't it be nice if, as a secondary thing, we could also tap into the Knowledge Forum database and see what's going on, so we can actually visualize what they're talking about. So I don't know, that would just something be interesting to me to showcase to other people who might be interested in knowledge building. Thanks.
Okay, so I think, thank you so much everyone for staying online. I think we have so many questions and ideas and even resources to step back and think about. And we will be populating the resources and some of the questions and ideas that have been contributed in the chat to our Knowledge Forum space. Again, as I said, we'll be sending out the annotated recording as well, so we could build on to some of these conversations and keep them going as we go into KBSI, the virtual event, and into the year. I just want, if anybody has any last minute ideas or questions that they want to throw out to the group, we can do that now, or we can sign off and say until next time. Any last minute questions from anyone?
I just want to, I think we're on talk about the meta space. We didn't get a lot of time to talk about the meta space. I mean, we don't have to discuss it, but maybe some ideas of how that is building up and so on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, well, Marlene, I think this is what you were mentioning for the next session, is how to create those visuals, or in whatever platform they're going to be, that is accessible to teachers and students, and that we could use to show them these connections, which is essential, in my understanding, is the meta space. So if I think if I'm not sure the extent to which that conversation is going to happen at the virtual event, or whether we want to schedule another, like how we can move that forward. We're certainly going to be putting like a mod slides and some of the ideas that were posted up on Knowledge Forum. But if there's a desire to have another session, maybe more of an informal, casual one sooner than KBSI, then we can also organize that as well. That's something that folks want.
So I think, because for us, I think the practical issues about the sites being able to connect, to see those connections fast enough, because our event is one after another, right? So for our students to be able to see what the students before us were looking at and talking about, and for us to build on, I think we need to sort out some of the back-end issues about platforms and so on. Yeah, just more operation, but it's important in order to get that idea building going, from getting the community to work together. Yeah.
Okay, so
Thanks,
between
thanks.
now
I'm going to stop
and
there.
okay, we'll work on that and see how we can get something in between. And you're saying before November 20, before the KBSI event, would be preferable from your perspective.
Yeah, because ours is right after KBSI.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder, Julie, you know, it's like anything is possible from a technical standpoint, you know, feedback to teachers, the kind of visualizations, the kind of cutting edge ideas. It feels like the real issues would be if you had a vision of what, like if the teachers could see X. Now, I know that this notion that these videos would be accessible from the map, there are all kinds of ethics issues underlying all of this, and we struggle mightily with all of that. What we've been trying to do for the meta space is just take it to a level of abstraction that shows connectedness, can feed back to the community, but if people have ethics requirements that their data cannot be in a public space, we can also honor that. And that what we need is the connection of ideas. We don't even need the explicit note, but without access to those ideas, we've checked, and you can completely anonymize the databases. So we can offer quite a bit of protection to people in terms of getting access to data. So I guess what I'm saying is we need envisionment, perhaps from teachers, like maybe if your teachers could give us some sense of what would they love above all, you know. My guess is that we're not talking about technical difficulties. We're talking about needs of teachers and accommodating their wishes. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get that. Like, I have no idea. Like, I was enchanted checking out the cutting edge of ideas after the topic modeling. So the topic modeling didn't help me. It was at a topical level, but I couldn't figure out what's the next step until the Google search said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this kind of information was out there. I didn't realize this discovery. But I didn't know if those would be interesting to teachers. Would they be interesting to students? Like, and so I think it's envisionment from a teacher and student perspective that we need above all.
Yeah, the teachers are still here, so I don't know whether they
that would be wonderful if they had some thoughts.
Yeah. Lalita and Melvin, you have any thoughts on that?
Are there teachers?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Come in for a short while first. Okay, this is a very good question. Generally, if I answer correctly, what the teachers would like to cover or would love to explore on might differ from what the students may like to explore or discover further. I think that's I think that's one possibility in the sense that's the part where a teacher enjoys as a participant with the students together, to experience as a student. I think that may help to address a certain part of it. And secondly, I think you mentioned about the needs of a teacher. I think it differs accordingly to a different organization, to a different nation by itself. Generally, at least within the Singapore context, I think we are quite clear that quite a number of teachers are very confined with the idea of a syllabus or idea of curriculum that they need to cover. So that would certainly affect in terms of their perception, their readiness in coming on board. But I think that also gives a possibility of us thinking out of the box on how do we connect subjects together, which is technically one of the heartbeat of a knowledge builder. To find connections across subjects, and more than just connections, more than just connection, but more of the authenticity between them, the linkages between them, and what to do with them, what to do with the knowledge that you have, the idea of knowledge being for a public good by itself. So I believe that as a, well, right now, if I understand correct, if I remember correctly, next year, in Singapore context, we have a changed syllabus in terms of citizenship education. Yeah, so I thought that it comes very hand in hand in terms of the needs of Singapore teachers in this context for now. Okay, I also throwing an idea saying that can we explore this entire discovery idea under the idea of citizen scientists and citizen archivists? Yeah, I just have some thoughts because I love citizenship or citizenry quite a lot. So I thought the idea of citizen scientist and citizen archivist sums up very nicely what we are doing itself. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Can I just add on? So in Singapore, because of COVID, we have there's so many issues that have been coming out, like during our class time with our students and all that. There's so many issues on character, values, ethics that are also thrown out. And I think that the students, I can see that they're concerned for not just Singapore, but for the world that they live in. So sometimes I think it's nice to generate these ideas or these issues that the students think that they're facing, and then the idea that, you know, they can find some solutions that have not been around. So those kind of things really can help, like you said, citizen scientists, when they come together, so that, you know, because we have different kinds of problems that we are facing now. So these kind of issues, I feel that the students want to have a voice, and I can see that more and more in our students. So it's very nice when we can do this kind of things together with them, and not just in Singapore, but when we connect across and you realize that it's actually one world. And I think the students can really see it, and they want their hand in it. They want to solve some issues. Yeah.
That actually feels like a really important component of the meta space, that, like, if we just went back to the presentations today and said, let's look at them from the point of view of ideas that are actually viable and meaningful in the world, so that what people would see is not just connectedness, but really knowledge for public good, that it would be a layer that they saw. And then at a different point, the extent to which they're actually dealing with the curriculum, so that teachers can feel like, oh, I see that we're not only dealing with the curriculum, but their ideas are meaningful to the world, they're connected to resources outside. And you're making me think that maybe we should quickly organize an envisionment session for the November event. So we should invite teachers, a special invitation for teachers, and maybe we could prepare just like maybe 5 slides, like addressing the curriculum, ideas living in the world, ideas connecting to the cutting edge, like just a couple of the phenomena that we've been working with. And teachers would just respond to what they would need to see beyond that. Like something would have to go back and literally connect with the notes of their students. Anyhow, so all I'm thinking of is an invitational session for teachers that was an envisionment session that could help us design the meta space.
In design terms, that would be like empathizing with the teachers, getting to what they care about, really taking it back to that level of the design experiment.
My guess is that it would also be a 2-part thing, because if we were to have that session with the teachers, I'm sure that they would also say, well, we'll take this back to our kids and then see how they work with it, and then we'll come back. So maybe we can envision it that sense, like that's what we're designing for with the teachers, and then we'll they'll be working with, and then if we all come together, maybe some of the kids could sign on that, and that I don't know in what world that would be possible if like what they're teaching at the same time, but it could be something that we can envision. It's kind of a two-step.
Or it's one of the slides that the teachers bring forward.
Right.
I could also imagine what is being presented today and see how the teachers are responding to it. I mean, just that visual about the connectedness, about the overlapping, about what kind of discourse they can have in the classroom. I think, Marlene, we spoke about this, like the word cloud itself, you know, like the scaffold tracker. These are really basic things, but our teachers have used it so creatively and allow the students to just take the agency. I mean, in Singapore, it's like we hear the latest network we have on this learning analytics. We have one of the teachers who has been really difficult to shift and let go, but he himself could say that during this cycle, I kind of didn't really do much. I show the learning analytics to the students and they kind of take charge. So I'm also thinking like in the design itself, the teachers will actually be thinking about how they're using this in the classroom with the students. And that could actually be integrated in the design studio work. So I don't know from now until the actual event, how much time we have in designing. But if we can have something that we show today, some of this, and allow some of this creative use of it, that might be another way to look at meta space. Yeah.
What if we, because we have the whole registrant list and all the emails, like we can just send out that PowerPoint with those visuals, inviting the teachers or that whoever, the educators, to have those conversations with their classes if they'd like, for feedback in terms of how to build these visuals. And then we could either, whether we then create another virtual session for the folks who want to sign on, like a more casual one where we could go through, and we can also have this on KF. Could be one way of, because then they could take it, and we won't have to orchestrate a day where everyone does it. They could just do it when it fits their schedules, have these conversations, and then we can get some feedback faster than, or in a faster way. Or is that too loosey?
I think we can give it, I think that we can give it a try. It's just we have 1 more week, 2 more weeks in school, right? Melvin and Lalita, do we have? Yeah, so our term is ending very soon, and we just have to catch the right, we just have a small window to reach out to our students with any of the new visual. I think they would love to talk to their students about it.
I guess I'm also thinking, like, I think that would be great, given what we know about teachers' time. The likelihood of getting feedback is not that high, but I think we could try, and we could maybe even just give them some visuals that they could show their students, so that you know, maybe their students could help say, you know, what they would like to see, like your idea picked up this, and so what would you like to see? So that says, I think we should go ahead, Monica, with your idea, but I'm also thinking of a think tank in November that's literally an invitation to teachers. Bodong, I'm just noticing you're still online, and I know you're saying your teachers just do not have time, like they're just, so much has changed in their worlds and they're really struggling. And I'm wondering, would they come to a session, or would they be part of a session if they knew we're here hoping to help them? Like, you know, we would like to ease their time, not expand their time. We can offer some look at, we can provide research, we can provide feedback about what they're doing. Is there anything we can offer that would actually get the teachers engaged?
Actually, the teacher I work with was attending this webinar, and he was here, and I think the situation is much better now, just because we're now, like, US is, our state is giving up on in terms of coming back to the school. So they're designing for fully online sessions. So actually he's starting a bunch of knowledge form views and communities for his classes. So I think the likelihood of being part of this for his class will be pretty high at this moment. And he's really, David Gross, this is the teacher I'm mainly working with. He's really on the cutting edge of thinking about how to, how to design KB support and scaffolds for his class. And Richard shared his dissertation, which is also very, very thoughtful and a really strong contribution to this community. So I think, yeah, the likelihood of David being part of this design experiment is pretty high. And for us, I think it would be really helpful for us as a community to figure out is what kind of resources we have in different teams distributed around the world, which we can tap into to support the whole community, right? Just being aware of what which team can do what, right? Because before this webinar, we don't know Ahmad has been, at least I didn't know Ahmad has been working on this topic modeling, or Julie and Awin has been working on some really cool analytics as well. So maybe another part of the next step is to build awareness among our teams to know what we have been working on and what is possible in terms of supporting this design experiment as we move forward into November.
Great.
Okay, so I think that there's a lot to work on now, and I think maybe like the next steps are within sight that we could take. Perhaps we can, if we all sign off now, we can just, we'll concretize some of those next steps and then send out an email to anyone who's interested in what we could take action ASAP. How does that sound? Good. Okay, well, thank you everyone for signing on. This is awesome that we could get so many people on at one time. And we will be in touch both with the larger group and with some of you for actual next steps that maybe we could do something in the next couple weeks. So if that's all, I know it's getting late also on the other side of the world. So good night to you all.
Good night.
And we'll talk to you all today. For everyone else, good afternoon, good morning. Well, thank you.
Good night.